Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. We can move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is roll call. And I'll ask our clerk, Jesse Clark, to please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Lamstead, are you present?
I am present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Braybrook?
Present.
Councillor Cadigan?
Present.
And Deputy Mayor Armstrong sends her regrets. For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Steve Brockbank, Director of Emergency Services.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barbara Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Bianca Dragicevic, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services, Clerk is present.
Okay, thank you very much, Jesse. We can move on now to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes in Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nation. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to item 2 of our agenda, which is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. If any member of council has a pecuniary interest on an item on the agenda, please disclose it now or anytime during the meeting prior to talking about anything you have a pecuniary interest in. I see Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, I have possible pecuniary interest in 8.2, the presentation by Natalie Baker, and 10.5, the water budget.
Okay, thank you very much. We will make sure that you step out of the meeting prior to discussing anything on those 2 items. Any other pecuniary interest? I see none. Okay, we can move on now to item 3 of our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. And I think Jesse Clark, our clerk, would like to speak to this item.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamstead, I would just request that the agenda be amended to include a delegation from Ricardo Borges, and it's related to the 2025 water budgets, which is item 10.5.1, and request that the agenda be approved as amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Is anyone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Brewer for a mover and Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We have approved the agenda is amended. Okay. We can move on now to item 4 of our agenda, which is adoption of the minutes. Item 4.1 is our regular council meeting from April the 8th. Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any further conversation regarding these minutes? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Now we can move on to item 5 of our agenda, which is committees and boards. Item 5.1 is the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting from April the 10th, the Library Board meeting from March the 14th, and the Committee of Adjustment is 5.3, Adjustments and Appeals Committee from March the 4th. We can do them all in one motion, or if you'd like to discuss something on one of the items, you can do that also. Councillor Braybrook?
A motion to receive all 5. It's all 5.
I think there's 3.
Yeah, 5.4 to 5.5 is going to be spoken to.
It will be in a minute. Yeah. Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, Councillor Cadigan for a second. Any further conversation about those 3 items? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 5.5 of the agenda, which is liaison reports, council boards and committees. Does anyone have anything to report? Oh, sorry.
5.4.
Sorry, 24. Yeah, I missed 5.4. That is the library board vacancy. And Jesse Clark, our Director of Corporate Services, would you like to speak to that item?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamstead, there's currently a vacancy on the library board, and in accordance with Section 13 of the Public Libraries Act, council shall be notified when a seat is declared vacant. Staff will give notice of the vacancy, inviting applications in the coming weeks.
I don't think we need a motion to receive that or anything. Okay, we can move on to 5.5 of the agenda, which is the liaison reports for council boards and committees. Does anyone have anything to discuss on that item? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to item 6 of our agenda, which is statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. Item 6.1, the statutory public meeting posted on this agenda will be rescheduled to a future meeting. So apologizing if you're here for that. We are not going to have a public meeting today. Okay, we can move on to item 7 of the agenda, which is business arising out of a statutory public meeting. We have none. So we can move on to item 8 of our agenda, which is presentations. And item 8.1 is Gibson Ingram. Please come to the podium. Have your presentation.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing? I understand this is going to be run here for me, so it's great to be here. This is probably the closest meeting I've had to attend. My family lives on Elwood Crescent, so it's a no-brainer to be here in person, so thanks for having me. I'm here on behalf of Grant Match, and Grant Match is a company that specializes in helping municipalities to secure government grants and incentives. We've been around for quite a long time, and we actually started in the Kawartha Lakes. Mike Janke is the owner of Grant Match. We've started in this community, the Kawartha Dairy being one of our first clients, and we've since grown to be a company that has about 40 or so employees, and we're scattered across Canada, and we specialize in municipalities as well as large private sector organizations. So I'm not sure the best way to move slides here, if I just need to verbalize it or what, but looks like we're on our way here. So I do have an agenda for us all today. I'd like to explain first a little bit more about who we are as a company, talk about our process and how we help municipalities to secure funding. I'll give you some examples of success stories and examples of communities that have benefited from government grants and how we go about securing them. I do have a couple of grants that I'd like to speak about specifically today that I think are relevant to Trent Lakes. And at the end, I'd like to go through our process of how Grant Match is paid. What is our fee structure and how does it work? So that is our agenda for today. By all means, if anyone has questions throughout, I encourage you to go ahead and ask them. I'd love this to be an open discussion rather than just a one-sided presentation. So first of all, a little bit about Grant Match. I did give you a bit of a background, but we have been around for about 25 years. We've secured over 500 million now in grants and incentives for our clients over that time. We have a staff of about 45 people. We're scattered across Canada, many of which are in Ontario and specifically the Kawartha Lakes and Trent Lakes. And we use a combination of data. We have the largest database of grants and incentives at all levels of government in Canada, as well as a team of grant writers. These grant writers are people who come from a variety of backgrounds, many of which are academics, former government employees, people who have worked for grant programs themselves. We have a great team of people who really understand what it takes to write compelling applications, to represent communities, and to secure maximum funding for community projects. Next slide, please. So municipalities are a big part of what we do. We have over 120 municipalities working with us currently across Canada. A lot of my time with Grant Match, I've been working with this company for over 5 years now, has been spent on working with municipalities to understand their needs and to work with them to develop a proactive grant strategy that works for the community. Overwhelmingly so, the problem that we solve as a company is that many municipalities are under applying for grants and incentives to help with their capital projects. And that's due to largely a lack of awareness, a lack of capacity, knowledge, and expertise to write the best and brightest applications. And that's where we come in. We're not here to displace anything that is already being done for grants. We understand that many municipalities have a pretty great approach, and they have personnel dedicated to this function. Although in many cases, this function is kind of dealt with on the sides of desks. Many people who are involved in the community in various roles have grants as part of their responsibility list, but not the primary function. And this can often lead to mismanagement or missing of grants, or just not having the time or capacity to take on these applications when, as many of you might be aware, fluctuating intervals of funding availability is quite a difficult thing to keep up with. Grants come and go throughout the year. There are federal grants that are offered at various intervals, provincial grants, some of which can be combined together, some of which are exclusionary. And it's a whole job in itself just to keep on top of this. So we use a combination of our software and our people so that our clients are the first to know about these opportunities, have a clear plan of attack, and understand which of their projects are eligible. Next slide, please. So I've kind of already dived into, the problem that we solve, and it really, if I were to summarize it, is the combination of understanding the programs, understanding the community, and understanding the projects so that we can thread the needle on them, focusing on high probability applications and helping communities navigate away from low probability opportunities that are often, do we have a question over here? Oh, sorry. Low probability opportunities that are often quite disappointing. Municipalities, we see this all the time where it seems like a really great fit on paper and you have somebody going after it and it ultimately leads to a decline due to a poor eligibility fit. So we're really able to cut through the noise and help municipalities understand the best and brightest opportunities. So next slide. And the decision to pursue grant funding is generally well understood. There are quite a few reasons why you would want to pursue grant funding in a time of high inflationary forces. Of course, the cost of money continues to go up, and grants are a great way to displace that and add to and make your community's dollars go further. And all in all, grants exist to help you achieve objectives for the local taxpayer. There are many different stakeholders in a given community, and we help to deliver some of those community needs through grants. Failing infrastructure and improving infrastructure in your community is always a paramount focus for any council or community leaders. And not only maintaining what you have, but building and increasing value for the taxpayer is always a focus. So failing infrastructure as well as net new buildings, wastewater treatment, municipal infrastructure are key areas where funding is most available. This might not be as relevant to Trent Lakes, but although as we've seen recently, accelerating disaster response is a big need across communities in Canada. And as we also saw, it can happen anytime. I've spent the last few weeks here with a chainsaw in my hands, and the work is not nearly over. And grants are a great way to mitigate. Sometimes there are big investments that need to be made for protection against flooding or forest fires. And those can sometimes be overlooked in places like this where it's not at the forefront. And there are lots of grants available at all levels of government to help with that. And then finally, reducing budgetary loans and commitments. As I mentioned at the beginning, the cost of money continues to go up and project costs continue to increase even as they're planned versus when they're being executed. These costs continue to go up. And grants are one of the best tools to get funding to help move that ahead and to help your dollars go further. All in all, to say that there are in fact billions of dollars available each year from the federal and provincial governments to help with community projects, and it's our responsibility to take advantage of those opportunities. So I kind of mentioned this as well before, but grants and incentives are amazing, but you really do have to put in the work to get them. They won't just fall in your lap in most cases. You do have to have a concrete and proactive plan to do it. And it starts with awareness. So we use a technology that we've developed in-house to help us be aware of that. It uses a matching algorithm that helps us look at eligibility requirements of various grant programs and to mesh those with the actual project details of a specific community. So when a new program comes out, like the Municipal Housing Infrastructure Fund that was just announced in Ontario, we would, if we were working with Trent Lakes, be able to acknowledge that fund, make the connection, and connect with the right people at the community to say, hey, we think this is a really excellent fit for what we know you have planned. Resources as well, so this is more of a capacity thing. So you might have department heads who are really quite busy with their day-to-day operations. They may not be allocating hours and hours of time each month or year to be writing grants and researching them. This is where we come in. The expertise. Many of these grant programs are quite competitive, and you're competing with neighboring municipalities for a set amount of funding. And you really do have to make sure that you have a compelling application and that your application is going to sit at the top of the pile. Do you have the numbers to back up what you're trying to do? Do you have the quotes? Do you have the narrative? Are you telling the story correctly so that the government body that is approving the funding will understand the community need and understand that the funds that they've allocated will be used for the intended purpose? And then, are you prepared? As I mentioned before, there's a lot of fluctuation that happens through the grant landscape. And in many cases, programs open and close on a fairly regimented schedule. So if you're not eligible this year, are you doing the things now to make sure that when this opens up next year, are we going to be ready to apply? Do we have our ducks in a row? Do we have the planning documents in place? Have we done our homework so that when that opens up, we can be first to apply and increase our chances of success? I also mentioned before that we're not here to displace anything that you're already doing. We're here to add extra horsepower to take on grants that maybe you don't have a high level of comfort with or are looking for an expert view on to increase your chances of success. So many municipalities have a set of allocated funds that they receive on an annual basis. There may be an in-house grant team or people who take on that role. And we're just here to come above and beyond and engage us when needed. That's a very important point. We're not here to take on all applications, only the ones that you require our assistance with. Next slide, please. We build proactive grant strategies. That's what we call it at Grant Match. And it starts with data. It starts with data and the matching process. We plan with you. Typically, when you get started with us, it's quite simple. We have a service agreement that we would get into place, and we would schedule a kickoff call with myself and a member of my team who would be a funding specialist, a grant writer in other terms. And that's where we get a bit of a pulse on what is most important to the community right now. This is where you would share your capital budget with us so we can dissect that capital budget and give you a very comprehensive overview of all of your upcoming capital expenses and the various grants and incentives that we think match up with that. It's then up to us as a partnership to decide, okay, these are the ones that we'd like to engage Grant Match on. These are the ones that we're taking on in-house. And this relationship will evolve over time. You'll have a dedicated funding specialist who will work with you throughout the year. It's a two-way street where we may be coming to you and saying, hey, Trent Lakes, this grant just opened up and we think it's a great fit for this project we know you have planned. Or it's you coming to us and saying, hey, Grant Match, we have a new topic that was presented at council, or we are moving ahead with a certain project, and we'd really like to know what sort of funding could be available to help with this if we were to move ahead. This relationship will grow over time, and it's kind of like having an additional staff or team behind you that is outsourced to take care of this function. Next slide, please. I mentioned stacking and pairing as well before, and this is a function that is quite challenging, I find, for a lot of folks who are taking this on internally. And this is the knowledge and experience to know which sort of grants can be stacked and paired together so that you can maximize your total grant allocation for a specific project. Stacking specifically refers to putting a provincial grant alongside a federal grant to maximize the total funding you secure. Whereas pairing is a function where you might pick apart aspects of a larger project in smaller moments. Let's say you're building a new hockey arena or a new municipal building. You might be able to separate off the accessibility from the actual capital costs or the green energy aspect, heating and cooling. You can kind of separate those into smaller aspects to apply to separate programs to maximize the total fund. So that's something that we're really quite good at doing, and our technology helps us cut through that. Next slide, please. There are a number of themes that we do follow at Grant Match that tend to change, but these themes have been pretty standard over the last few years. And these are informed by capital budgets that are presented by federal and provincial governments. We spend a lot of time each year as a team analyzing what governments are telling us, where the funding is going, because that's the most accurate forecast as to where grants will pop up when a certain allocation has been given. So affordable housing has been huge over the last few years, and that's not going to stop. We expect that any community that is investing in creating more homes or the infrastructure that support more homes or new buildings will be eligible for grants if they are spending in that way. Environmental has been huge, and it will continue to be. If you are investing in any projects that have a greater impact on reducing the carbon footprint of your community, there are often grants to help with those investments. Economic development for creating jobs and increasing prosperity in a region is a really great lever for grants. Infrastructure, anytime you're cutting checks and moving ahead on large infrastructure projects, it's imperative that you have a full grant review to make sure that you're not leaving money on the table when you're investing in infrastructure. And things like culture as well. The Kawartha Settlers Village, for example, I know it's in Kawartha Lakes, but they are a grant recipient quite often, and they invest in community arts and culture and preserving heritage. And there are many opportunities for grants when you're investing in those sort of things. So these are kind of some key levers. There are certainly other areas that we focus on at Grant Match. It's quite agnostic that way. But anytime you're spending in these areas, you should think what sort of grants could help with this. Next slide, please. This is a slide that's a little bit about our database. And our data is kind of part of our secret sauce, if you will, on what makes us really good at receiving approvals. We have the largest collection of grants, as I mentioned, in Canada. We've been building this for over 10 years, and it's constantly learning and growing. We have web crawlers and AI that help us to basically scrape the internet so that when a new program opens, we have it in our database and we're able to make those connections with our clients right away. The other part of this is historical approvals. We collect a very large data set of all the historical funding as it's been allocated throughout the years in Canada. It gives us a great strategic advantage because we're able to tell our clients, if you're investing in a new municipal office, here are all the examples in your region, in your province, in Canada of how other communities have funded these projects. Which funds did they use? Are those funds still available? How much did they get? When did they get it? We have all of that information. So we're able to give you some pretty accurate benchmarking and give you a better sense of your risk involved with an application. If you're applying to the Ontario Trillium Fund, for example, we can give you very specific examples of how that fund's been used, how much they got, when they got it, and that sort of thing. And we can kind of steer you away from it. If it really doesn't fit what the Ontario Trillium Fund typically funds, we'll kind of steer you away from that, or we might help develop our application in a way that we know will be more compelling to that fund based on our historical approval knowledge. This is a really important function. It's unfortunately not something that most municipalities are equipped to do that level of analysis. So this certainly helps. Next slide, please. I have a few success stories that we've collected over the last few years of clients that we work with currently. I think it just gives you a great sense of the sort of projects that we can be involved in and how we can help. City of Kawartha Lakes, I'm sure a few of you or most of you have driven by this project, but it involves Lindsay's affordable housing project that was done right down near Kent Street there. We helped them with a Green Municipal Fund loan that was a funding approval over $5 million to help with that low income housing that also doubled as a net neutral affordable housing complex. And we combined that where we did that stacking function with a $750,000 grant from the Low Carbon Economy Fund to help with the construction of that low income housing unit. Separately, we also helped them with a $245,000 grant secured through the Rural Economic Development Fund to help with a downtown revitalization project. Next slide, please. Town of Warwick, Ontario. This was a great approval not so long ago either. $750,000 to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. This is a federal program. And what they did was they had an existing ice pad with hockey arena that they wanted to add community space to, so a hall. This would allow them to increase programming for youth and underserved members of the community, including seniors. So they could run programming and sports after school programs and be able to rent it out as a revenue source for dances, Jack and Jills, and that sort of thing. So they were able to secure this grant and move ahead with the construction. And since then, it's been about 100% booked since they've done it. So a very great thing and a huge community need that was solved with the catalyst of a grant. Next slide. Drayton Valley, Alberta. We have many clients out west, and disaster mitigation is a bigger thing there, but I thought this project was pretty cool. It may not apply to Trent Lakes because Trent Lakes is fairly remote, but we still have community spaces that we enjoy and green spaces. And this was a project that Drayton Valley used to connect various green spaces throughout their community through walking paths and trails. So if there are any sort of outdoor areas or recreational areas where you want to improve pathways, that's often a really great way to secure a grant. You can think about walkways and bridges and resurfacing, signage, things like that. There are many ways for you to secure funding that way. Next slide, please. Another Western client here is in Westavan. They had a community hub that was essentially a multi-use recreational facility. It had 2 pools, a library, sports fields, a gallery, multi-use space. It was a real hub for a lot of rural communities that, similar to Trent Lakes, have a number of very small communities scattered that, you know, really benefit from having centralized, more improved recreation facilities. So they had a quite a large facility that was probably about 15 to 20 years old, and it was already ready for a new roof rehabilitation. So we were able to secure them nearly $1 million to help them resurface their roof and install new AC units on their roof to help with that. So another great example of keeping your existing assets operational and reinvesting in them. Not everything has to be a brand new net new project to be eligible for a grant. Next slide, please. Princeton, BC. This was a $750,000 approval through a Pacific Economic Development Canada. I know it's quite far away from us here, but I like this one because it's a project that involved a private sector business that was in partnership with the municipality that were investing in a project that benefited the entire community. So this was to install RV pads as a mixed use public recreation space, and as well as new washrooms. So a washroom facility, I understand, is a pretty critical function, and most public spaces need them, and not all of them have them. So even simple projects like this is something that Trent Lakes could work on, and there are certainly grants to help with that. Next slide, please. So we can transition now from the success stories and talk a little bit more about, you know, what we have to offer. If you look across the board using our database and our experience, we know that there's only about a 25% rate of approval or a chance of approval that most municipalities face. About 1 in 4 applications are approved when you look at the numbers, and that is quite hard to plan for. You know, that leads to a lot of disappointment. This is by design, however. It's, you know, the governments want to fund the projects that are the best and the brightest and satisfy the most amount of eligibility requirements and give back the most to make the funding go further. But that's quite hard to deal with as a small community. So we have a historically 75% rate of approval. This is a combination of our data first approach as well as our team of grant writers. And this is a far easier number to contend with. It reduces a lot of frustration and helps you plan more effectively when we have a higher level of approval. And we're quite proud of that number. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. And this are the nuts and bolts of how Grant Match essentially gets paid. What municipalities love most about us is that we are a performance contingent company. That means that we do not charge any fees, no hourly fees, project-based fees, or anything along those lines, retainers, until we actually have secured you an approval. And The way it works is that we charge a percentage on any funding we secure. So you'll see a 10 and 5 percentage at the bottom. We charge a 5% fee on any funding we secure greater than $1 million, and a 10% fee on any funding secured below $1 million. So you get quite a lot of value very upfront with grant match. If we were to partner with Trent Lakes, we would get started fairly quickly, and we would meet with your team to understand your capital budget and your goals and what's coming up. And we get to work. We start doing our matching and planning process to give you a very clear understanding of what your opportunities are. And it's only when you give us the green light on a certain application or project that we are diving into the application process. We handle every aspect of the application, from the planning to identification, all the way through the writing, and even the submission on your behalf, if that's what you'd like us to do. And we will even cover the first round of compliance reporting after the approval's been made. If there are subsequent rounds of compliance reporting, we will train your staff during that first round. If there are subsequent deadlines, you need to resubmit details on the project, but we are kind of full service start to finish. And many municipalities will start with us on a single project, kind of let's see what you can do grant match, and that will typically evolve into a more comprehensive approach. But the main thing here is the percentages and the performance contingency, and no additional fees outside of that. And that's essentially my presentation today. So I'd love to answer questions for anybody. I've been doing this for quite a long time. I've seen quite a few, so don't hold back. And I'm here to help. So
Okay, thank you very much, Gibson. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions? Councilor Graber, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks very much, Gibson. That's it's pretty exciting to, possibly have this to our avail. I have questions myself, and then our deputy mayor also asked me to ask 20 questions. So
it's a comfortable
You only
chair.
get
yeah,
three.
that's right. Yeah. So I'll start with our deputy mayor's, Carol Armstrong's questions. You say 75% success rate. How many have you won? Like, how many grants have you applied for, and how many have you won?
I don't have a figure for how many grants. I can tell you some financial stats, however. Last year alone, we secured over $200 million in grants for our clients. Over the lifetime, that would be upwards of, it would be a lot. I won't quote a specific quote, but I do have the recent numbers in mind. As far as number of applications, I could probably give you a ballpark for how many we might apply for in a single year. It would be upwards of 100 full applications that we might do for across our team. This fluctuates, however. For example, this Municipal Housing Infrastructure Fund, we would expect to be making over 10 applications to a single fund at any given time. So we really respond to the volume that's available in terms of funding programs. But if you name a program, we've been there, done that, and have the experience to do it.
Great. Thanks for that. The second one is I was searching the internet. I was trying to find competitors and that sort of thing. I found that there's not really many competitors. So I'm sure you would know.
Yeah.
How many competitors are you dealing with?
You're right in that there aren't really any direct competitors that do this performance contingent grant writing for municipalities. We seem to have found a niche here that is a great combination of a huge problem that needs to be solved, and any other players in the space. There are folks like Funding Portal or MentorWorks that do similar work to what we do, but they don't offer this performance contingency. And I think that's because they don't have the grant writers that de-risk the process. So of course, we only make money if we're successful in getting the grant, and we're putting a lot on that. It's we have to dedicate a whole team to comprehensive applications, and there's no guarantee of us getting paid on quite a lot of professionals' hours being put into this. So you really have to be sure that your team is tight and knows what they're doing. And we've started really small and slowly grown organically to achieve a relationship where we can continue to grow and it makes sense and the fundamentals are there. So I think many of our closer competitors are a bit afraid of taking on that risk. And we've seemed to have figured out what it takes to be successful there. And of course, it makes client acquisition easier because it's such a low risk proposition for the client. So that's kind of why I think there aren't as many competitors.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any questions of your own?
I do. I was just going to get that.
Okay.
Thank you. And through you, thanks for pointing that out. Do you work with existing in-house grant writers, and how do you avoid duplication?
Yeah, we certainly do. We often rely on an in-house grant person to either be a quarterback for us to understand what the community needs are. We're never here to displace what they're already doing. It's often the grant writer who's most excited to work with us to say, I'm in over my head here. I've got these taken care of, but could you please take this on? I'll connect you with the right people, and we take it from there. So very used to working with the grant coordinator, writer, whoever it might be. You know, that's often one of our great internal sort of resources. So.
And just my last
Okay.
1.5 questions, if I may. Several grants are contingent on, even if our municipality wins a grant, it's contingent on shovels in the ground.
Right.
And that sort of thing. So if there were to be a situation where we would win a grant through your company and through regulations and studies and whatnot, it's delayed and we lose the grant, what sort of financial obligation is on the municipality?
That's a great question. It very rarely comes up, but if it were to come up, we do have a clause specific in our agreement that addresses it. And I do believe it's something along the lines of a percentage of the total funding secured. But if it falls under their category of government failed projects, I think you're off the hook for any fees involved. It depends on the circumstances of why it was denied. If it were, for example, on like the fault of the Trent Lakes, for example, that they didn't follow through on something, I think fees would be due. But if the government of the province or the federal government had rescinded funding or didn't approve that despite doing our work, there would be no fee due there. So I believe it would be on the municipalities. The onus would be on you to follow through on a project that you've been secured funding for.
I'd be interested in those numbers.
Yeah,
I don't know if
certainly.
you can provide them afterwards.
Yeah, I will give you our complete service agreement, and we have a very specific clause that details this. And unfortunately, I'm having a bit of trouble to remember the very specific wording we use, but we can get into that.
Right. Last half question. So your fee, so it's 10% up to $1 million, and then
That's
after $1 million, greater than $1 million is 5%.
Yeah.
So it's just it's on the grant amount and not the project.
Correct.
amount,
Yes,
right? So
Yeah.
if the project's 2 million and the grant's 1 million, you're not charging your fee on 10. or
that's
20.
right. And it's kind of like a graduated system, like a tax bracket, right? If we were to get you exactly $1 million, our fee would be 10% of that, $100,000.
Right.
If we were to secure you $2 million, our fee would be $150,000 because the subsequent million would be charged at 5%.
Right. Great. Thanks so much.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, through the mayor, I'm just wondering what other municipalities in the area in Peterborough County and possibly Halliburton County have you worked with?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, of course, Kawartha Lakes is one of them.
Yeah.
Duro, Dummer, both of the Cabin Hills municipalities you work with. Municipality of Whitestone, which is, I guess, fairly north here. I'm just trying to think of the map. And these are just ones that I've signed up myself. So there are other team members who do what I do. And I can give you a very detailed list of which ones in the area. Those are the ones that come to mind.
Just through the mayor. I wonder if there's any questions from staff, particularly John Tiger.
I think we're going to get to that once we're done with our council questions.
Yep.
Councillor Cadigan, do you have any questions?
I do.
Okay. Then I have a couple of comments more than questions. Like we have developed an open space master plan, a facilities master plan. So those will come with some opportunity for grants. Do you actually read our plans and make
Yes.
sure that we know that you know what we're coming up? Because we're heading into a probably, to be very gentle, $11 million build of an infrastructure build.
Yeah.
And we've just come off of a $7 or $8 million infrastructure build. And we're really needing some grant funding. So those are the kinds of projects that you would be able to look into and find
Certainly.
and maybe secure some.
Yeah, we would look at that as a primary document to jump off of. And, our funding specialists have quite a lot of experience of analyzing these sort of documents. That's going to help us build the most compelling application process or application. So certainly that would be the sort of primary document we'd want to look at.
And that was my shovel-ready idea was, I think, answered already. Forest, flooding and forest fires, I think we just went through one aspect of that and let's cross our fingers we're not getting into the next aspect of that. So, thank you very much. Okay, now, is there any comments or questions from staff? Go ahead, Donna Taggart, our
Thank
CAO
you,
treasurer.
through you. Thank you. I did have an opportunity to meet Gibson. I did ask that he come to council, so you had an opportunity as well to ask questions. I do absolutely see a potential benefit to this, and we have been successful over the years on some grant applications, but they do take time and they usually come up rather quickly with short turnaround time. So we can definitely see an advantage of that. It's also, of course, it would have a financial impact, which is why I wanted Gibson to present that today, because that would come at a cost. But yeah, we would look to bring a staff report forward after this and seek council approval to sign an agreement with Grant Match. And of course, there's some additional questions we would answer as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Donna. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. I would like to thank you, Gibson. I see a very interesting road forward for us. So
Thanks very much for having me, everyone.
thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
your time. Okay. Anyone be prepared to make a motion to receive that information? Councillor Braybrick for a mover. Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any further conversation about the presentation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, now we'll move on to item 8.2 of our agenda. Natalie Baker, Business Development Manager, and Brent Martin, Senior Operations Manager, Ontario Clean Water. Would you take the podium and feel free to start your presentation. Thank you.
Afternoon, Your Worship, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Franzen, for your declaration of a perceived conflict of interest.
Okay. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council, municipal staff. My name is Natalie Baker, Business Development Manager with the Ontario Clean Water Agency. So nice to be here with you today. Today, we also have Brent Martin, your Senior Operations Manager for the facilities owned by the municipality, as well as Lynette Nicholson, the General Manager for the Kawartha Trent region. And we're going to keep both of them back there on their toes today by directing all your difficult questions to them at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to begin with an overview of the regulations and reporting background in Ontario and what the requirements are for the facilities owned by the municipality. I will then go over the annual reports that include both Section 11 and Schedule 22 of Regulation 170 and the results for 2024. We will then do a brief review of operations in 2024, as well as look at the capital recommendation list for 2025. So before we dive into the annual reports, I always like to take a step back and provide some background information on the Ontario Acts and regulations. I am sure you have all of this information memorized from my previous presentation, so I will make sure to keep it brief, but it is good to have a quick refresher. If you can believe it, 30 years ago, there was actually only 2 acts in place to regulate drinking water systems in Ontario: the Ontario Water Resources Act and the Health Protection and Promotion Act. This was until the Walkerton outbreak happened in 2000, and as a direct result of that incident, the Safe Drinking Water Act was implemented in 2002. From that act, a few regulations were implemented in 2003, the Ontario Regulation 169, which outlines the acceptable drinking water quality for various parameters such as arsenic, fluoride, lead, and nitrates, and we are going to get into the results of those testing from last year. And then Regulation 170, which outlines the drinking water requirements in terms of treatment, chemical water sampling, operational tasks, continuous monitoring equipment, and compliance reporting. An important factor for all drinking water systems is for certified operators to operate them. Certification criteria is outlined in Ontario Regulation 128. So all of these were implemented in order to provide that multi-barrier approach to providing safe, clean drinking water to the public. I have highlighted today Ontario Regulation 170 in red because we are going to discuss Section 11 and Schedule 22 of that particular regulation. Next slide. So moving on to the 2024 reporting requirements, there are three main reporting requirements outlined in Ontario Regulation 170. There is Schedule 16, which is the reporting of any type of adverse test result. Schedule 22, also known as the summary reports, which summarize the quantity of raw and treated water produced by the facilities. And then Section 11, the annual reports, which summarize the quality of the treated water in terms of turbidity, chlorine residuals, lead, organic and inorganic parameters, and highlights any exceedances of Ontario Regulation 169. So today we're really looking at a quantity versus quality in both facilities. Each year, Aqua combines all of this reporting information into one report for each facility and provides it to the municipality. Next slide. So both Buckhorn Lake Estates and Alpine Village Pirates Glen drinking water systems under Ontario Regulation 170 of the Safe Drinking Water Act are to receive annual inspections by the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. The primary focus of the inspection is to confirm compliance with all of the regulations that we just looked at in that previous slide, as well as conformance with any ministry-related drinking water policies and guidelines during that inspection period. They utilize a comprehensive multi-barrier approach in the inspection of water systems that focuses on source water protection, treatment, distribution, monitoring, and management practices. Within the most recent inspections by the MECP, both facilities received no non-compliances and 100% inspection rating. In fact, over the last 9 years, Aqua, together with the municipality, has had a total of 18 inspections, where 15 received 100% inspection rating, only 3 falling below perfection, but still over 96%. Slide, please. So the reporting requirements for Schedule 22, known as those summary reports, is to present the latest quantity data. As previously mentioned, is broken down into both raw water and treated water categories. For raw water, the average daily volume, in this case groundwater, over the year is compared to that permit to take water. The same comparison is then made for the maximum daily volume. For treated water, the average volume is compared to the municipal drinking water license. So the license has what's called a rated capacity for each facility, and that is the maximum amount of treated water the facility can produce. So for reference, Schedule 22 begins in each annual report under the title Flows, which I believe is page 3. Next slide, please. So as you move through both reports, you will see multiple graphs for both raw and treated water data. The graph gives us a great visual of how the Buckhorn Lake Estates drinking water system is performing for rated capacity. We have the average monthly flows along with the maximum monthly flows compared to that municipal drinking water license. For reference, the rated capacity for Buckhorn Lake Estates under that license is 393 cubic meters per day. So you can see the system is operating well within the rated capacity. The fluctuations you are viewing are related to service line breaks and leaks within the system. So leak repairs were made in June that caused the usage to drop, and then another leak was then determined in September and corrected at that time. So that's why you get some of those dramatic fluctuations in flows. Slide, please. This graph, once again, is for Buckhorn Lake Estates drinking water system and shows the annual flow comparisons from 2013 all the way to 2024. You can see there has been some spikes throughout the years, but total flow has remained fairly consistent with gradual increases in usage over time. Please. So moving on to Alpine Village, we have once again, the average monthly volume along with that maximum monthly volume compared to the municipal drinking water license. For reference, the rated capacity for this system is 458 cubic meters per day. You can see once again, the system is operating well within the rated capacity with fluctuations related to service line repairs in the system. Next slide. Similar to the graph we looked at for Buckhorn, this graph is for Alpine Village, where water system and shows the annual flow comparison from 2013 all the way to 2024. Once again, very similar, some spikes throughout the years, but a gradual increase in usage over time. Slide. So moving on to the section 11 reports, they outline any exceedances of Ontario Regulation 169 parameters. So we just looked at quantity of water, and we are now moving on to look at the quality of water for both systems. Within the section of the report, you will see the term MAC used often, which is known as a maximum acceptable concentration for each parameter being tested. Section 11 begins under the title Regulatory Sample Results Summary in each report. So this is page 6 for Alpine and 5 for Buckhorn, and it outlines numerous tables for microbiological testing, operational testing, inorganic parameters, organic parameters, and any additional samples required by the ministry. I am not going to go through each line item in these tables as it will take us all day, but in summary, both facilities, both drinking water systems had no exceedances over the maximum acceptable concentrations listed for inorganic or organic parameters in 2024. Now, one thing you probably noticed when reading through the reports were the levels of sodium for both facilities. And I wanted to point out that there's actually no MAC for sodium, but what is known as an aesthetic objective set out by the health unit. So the aesthetic objective is 200 milligrams per liter, but we are required to report any sample over 20 milligrams per liter. So that information can be communicated by local physicians to anyone on a sodium restricted diet. So when you're looking through the results, it does show that it was over, but like I said, it is an aesthetic objective that we have to report. The collection for Buckhorn was 46.8 and Alpine was only 26.3, so well within that aesthetic objective, but once again, over the 20 milligrams to report on. So since 2006, Aqua has managed your assets through various multi-year contracts, with the current contract set to expire at December 31st of this year. Under the current contract between Aqua and the municipality, we operate and maintain both the Buckhorn and Alpine Village drinking water systems and associated distribution systems. I'm not going to go through all of the services included in our contract. If you are looking for some light reading, I'm sure that we could provide the contract at a later date. But just some of those typical operations include daily rounds, review of trending and residuals, distribution checks, chlorine residuals, routine maintenance and major maintenance, compliance management and regulatory reporting, as well as hydrant flushing, valve exercising, and line or break repairs. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned in the last slide, the current contract between Aqua and the municipality is set to expire at the end of this year. We are currently working on a renewal proposal that will be submitted to Madam CAO for review and discussion. The proposal will highlight Aqua's operating philosophies and experience working with Trent Lakes over the years, as well as any type of proposed revisions to the operating agreement. Our current agreement does contain an option for contract renewal under the same conditions, and we believe the renewal will provide the municipality with a continuation of service which promotes improvement and a whole system approach to operations, stability for future capital planning and facility operating adjustments, the continuation of operating staff to retain process knowledge. The renewal term also promotes extended tracking of asset maintenance, process and compliance results. Aqua is a cost recovery agency, and when an operating agreement nears its expiry date, we do conduct an extensive review to determine any potential increases to expenses over the length of the term. When we fixed our operating costs for the current term based on historicals, we were not able to predict the financial challenges COVID would pose during that term. In our renewal proposal, we will break down any increases and those components of any increases under labor, services and supplies, chemicals and insurance to give a fulsome understanding of our proposed costs for future discussion. Next slide, please. So every year, the municipality is provided with a 6-year major maintenance and capital recommendation list for the facilities. And this list is created using a combination of information such as operational knowledge and experience working in the facilities, engineering design and information from Aqua CMMS, such as end of asset life cycle. The document contains a list of requests for equipment replacement and repair, as well as an explanation as why it is being recommended. For example, the replacement relates to compliance or health and safety. Once submitted, we wait for the approval of the municipal budget for these projects and then work very closely with municipal staff to have all of the work completed within that timeframe. So in 2024, Aqua completed multiple capital projects on behalf of the municipality, which included chemical pump parts, backwash disposal system design, distribution flushing and leak detection, as well as filter maintenance and cartridge filters. In addition to the capital projects, we did once again have a large number of service line break repairs, with 5 in Buckhorn Village and 3 in Alpine. Next one, please. Moving on to 2025, we have suggested well cleaning and inspection for both facilities, chemical pump spare parts, distribution flushing, and Singer valve maintenance, which is completed every 5 years. So we're now coming up to that 5-year mark. There's also a recommendation for filters and backwash control system replacement now that that design is completed in 24. Based on the service line repairs in 23 and 2024, we've also included the budget recommendation for distribution repairs at $55,000 for both facilities, as well as additional funding for any type of unplanned equipment failures. So that today concludes my presentation. We've gone through the Ontario regulations as well as Schedule 22 and Section 11 in the annual reports. We certainly value the partnership we've built here in the municipality of Trent Lakes and look forward to working with you in years to come. And now would be the time, if there's any hard questions, that we'll bring Lynette and Brent to answer.
Good, I'm expecting some really detailed questions about the MAC.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Hey, does any members of council have any comments or questions? You're looking at me with some sort of eyes. Councillor Cadigan, go
For
ahead.
you, Mayor Lambs, and my question is about the sodium, and I think you explained this before. Is it due to road salt that we have higher sodium in the water, or?
Through your worship, I believe sodium is naturally occurring in the water and isn't related to road salt, but that is a great question to pass back to either Lynette or Brent to answer.
I can answer that question through you, Mr. Mayor. Sodium does naturally occur in groundwater, but elevated levels can be impacted by road salt. Over time, over years and years, it can increase.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Braber.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Thanks very much for your presentation, and there's no questions from our deputy mayor, so it'll be quick. So, any increase in usage, could that be attributed to leaks as well?
I can answer that. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have seen an increase in permanent residences in both systems since COVID. In Buckhorn Estates in particular, we've seen more houses being built there as well. But like the big spikes on the graph are definitely caused by service needs.
That does concern me, I must admit. Go ahead.
Last one, thanks. You mentioned the sodium amounts, so 20 is the sort of cap, but it's still acceptable up to 200. If it's over, which one of them is 46 or 48, I think you mentioned, does that trigger anything as far as provincial compliance or regulations or anything?
So through your worship, the aesthetic objective, so that's when you'd be able to taste sodium in the water, is 200 milligrams per liter. The 20, if once you come over 20, it triggers us to report it, just so that physicians in the area can tell anyone that's on a sodium restricted diet. So it's just, all it prompts is the reporting factor associated with it.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So thank you very much for that. That was an excellent presentation. I'm really happy that we have Aqua representing us at our facilities, because you do a great job of maintaining and anticipating the needs of our future system. So we thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we probably should have a motion first. Go ahead, Councillor Braber.
Motion to receive.
Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Did you have a question, Don? I missed that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. If we can retrieve Councillor Franzen. Thank you, Bianca. Don't tell me he's eating back there. He's having his lunch.
He's declaring an interest in all three of those.
Okay. Okay, so we can move on to item 9 of our agenda, which is delegations, and we have Ricardo Borges. Would you like to come to the podium?
Sorry, he's online.
Online, sorry, I apologize.
I've unmuted him, but Ricardo, you'll have to unmute yourself as well.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Ricardo. Go ahead with your delegation.
Fantastic, thanks. And I actually had a question for the OCWA rep.
You can do,
We just sort of,
we can maybe get an answer to that after. So go ahead with your delegation.
okay, yeah. When brake repairs are being done, was any cause of the damage ever determined?
Okay, we'll try to get you that answer. I don't know.
And if the damage was ever documented, such as photos, video, notes, comments with that?
Okay, we'll get the answers for you and get back to you on them.
Okay, great, thanks. That was all.
That was all your, okay. Take any comments
Yeah,
from
thank you.
for, do we need a motion to receive? I would entertain a motion to receive that delegation. Councillor Cadigan for a mover, Councillor Braybrick for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried, and we will pass a couple of those questions on to your staff. If you could have answers for us, we can give them to Ricardo. Okay. That motion is carried. Thank you for the vote. You only need a vote. Okay, we can move on now to staff reports. Item 10.1 is Public Works. We have none. 10.2 is Recreation and Facilities. We have none. 10.3 is Fire Emergency Services. We have none. 10.4 is Building and Planning. We have none. And item 10.5 is Finance. 10.5.1, Donna Taggart, our CEO Treasurer. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you, and through you. So before you today for approval are the 2025 water budgets for the Buckhorn Lake Estates and Alpine Pirates Glen water systems. So as a reminder, there are 318 users on these two user pay systems. So in 2024, the Buckhorn Lake Estates system had a deficit of $56,253.32 due to several significant water service failures. And I know Natalie has spoken to those already. So with the deficit from 2023, the total reserve deficit at year end for 2024 for this water system was $78,459.66. So with the updated asset management plan prepared by Aqua in 2024, there was a recommendation to increase rates by 2% annually, which would return the reserve to a positive position by 2031. The recommended rate of $2,020 for this system does result in a $75 annual increase, which is 3.85%, attempting to return the reserve to a positive position sooner. The 2025 water budget before you today does contain an unfunded amount for this system of almost $21,000, as the current budget does not cover the cost to operate the system. In 2024, the Alpine Pirates Glen system did have a deficit of $23,713.64, which was also due to water system failures requiring repairs. Even with this deficit, there was still a transfer to reserve of $5,390 in 2024, with the transfer that was budgeted and the reserve interest earned. So that water system does have a reserve balance at the end of 2024 of $246,627.40. So the recommendation today is that that council receive the report, and further that council approve a 2025 Buckhorn Lake Estates rate of $2,020 and an Alpine Pirates Glen rate of $1,140. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna Taggart. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions of Donna? Go ahead, Councillor Braybrick.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks very much, Donna. Just a question as far as the deficits. Depending on, I guess, how large they are, is there any sort of warranties on systems, or is there any insurance that could cover these costs as opposed to downloading it on the ratepayers and whatnot?
So thank you, and through you. So just to clarify, the water system has to be paid by the water users. So there is not an element where it's spread across the municipality to taxpayers that don't have access to the water. So what happens right now is that it's set up, and it would have been presented in the audited statements that came to council recently as an unfunded amount. And what we will hope to do over future years is reduce that unfunded amount. We're hoping for a better year for repairs. Any surpluses would go to offset that, but the costs incurred at that system have to be paid for by the people there. So as far as anything and warranty on any work that's done, I would ask our experts in that field. Maybe Brent, you could speak to that if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, so as far as warranties, we're having the majority of the failures are the distribution piping, which is original to the system when the system was originally built. And that goes back 30, 40 years. So there would be no warranty or liability on that original work.
Okay. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, just to follow up through you, Mayor. What would you estimate, being that it's 20, 30 years, how old the system is? How much of that system is still the old system?
That would, in the, through Mr. Mayor, the Buckburn Lake Estate system, it would be almost all original. Alpine Arts Glen, there was a project to replace all the services from the water main to the curb stop, but that still leaves the original water mains and the original services from the curb stop to the house. So over time, we have been replacing the ones that are leaking. So usually when they start leaking, we replace it, which is, we've looked at it, and it's still almost more cost effective to do it that way than to go ahead and to replace it all at once.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I'm just going to make a motion to approve the report.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braver for a seconder.
And also to council approve the recommendation from staff to increase the amounts.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay with that for a second part of that?
I am.
Okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much for the presentation and the information. And we do have a couple of questions that we might want to ask you to get to that presentation for later. We'll send you some questions.
That's great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. Welcome back, Councillor Franzen.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, we can move on now to item 10.6 of our agenda, which is administration. We have none. 10.7 is corporate services. We have none. Correspondence for information. 11.1 is the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. Would you like to speak to that item or prepared to make a motion? Councillor Franzen, go ahead.
Motion's received.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Been a very active committee in our community. Okay, we can move on now to item 12 of our agenda, which is correspondence for action. Item 12.1, Steve Brockpoint, our Director of Emergency Services. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to council. Before you have a report, and my recommendation today is that you receive this correspondence from the Ministry of Solicitor General regarding fire protection grant funding. And what this is it's a report just to follow procedures on We received approximately $32,000 in a grant this year from them. And this is money that they happen to have left over that we were still, was still available to Trent Lake. So it was for $361.73. So all the kicking and screaming we have done, I didn't think we should pass this up. So this today is a formality for the mayor and clerk to execute the transfer payment agreement and sign the attached documents.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions for Chief Brockman? Councillor Catton, go ahead.
Through your mayor, what was the original amount that we got? Was it 30,000?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Cadigan, it was 32,000 and change.
32.
Yeah. And this is for the what's listed in the what it says will support. So PPE, face masks, spare flash hoods and gloves. So it's really oriented around the cancer mitigation program that we're trying to adopt.
Great program.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Braver. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. This is just me and my accounting in my head. So does that bring the total to $32,361.73?
Through you, Mayor. It would, but we don't receive that much after all the staff hours and everything that go into collecting this $360. But they keep a portion for administration and such. It was around $8,000 that was kept in. But to give you an example, out of the $32,000, just 60 pairs of gloves and 60 flash hoods. So one spare set of gloves and face or balaclava for our staff is about $32,000. So stuff's expensive.
Yeah, it's right through. So the 8,000, is that off the 32,000?
Yeah.
So you have no access to that 8,000. How do we remedy that? How do we?
That's a very good question. That is, it's for administration and all that stuff on their end. So it's a minister question.
Really good question for our next conference attendees to have a chat with our Solicitor General.
Through Mayor Lamb said to Councilor Braybrook, I'd like to overlook the 8,000 and say we're lucky that we received the 32,000, but you heard today like that you have to write the grant and do all the work, and it's a exorbitant amount of work ultimately. Yeah.
And that's our responsibility as council to be your voice, right? You maintain your, you know, and that's our responsibility. So that's eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. I guess that would be for most grants, right?
I'm sure there is administrative costs, yeah.
I never see that stated though, right? Yeah,
Correct.
I will let, that was just a comment. So thanks, Mark.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks, Chief.
And thank you for your information. Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion here? Councillor Cadigan, go ahead.
Motion to receive the report.
And I think there's a little more. There's if you don't mind.
If I may, I don't think it's in
I don't
the
think it's in
report,
there.
but staff are also looking for council to approve the proposal for spending the additional funds and authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute any required documentation, including the transfer payment agreement.
I so move.
So moved. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any further conversation about the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. About $294 out of that. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to item 13 now of our agenda, which is bylaws. Item 13.1 is bylaws on the agenda memorandum. Jesse Clark, would you like to speak to this item, please? Or no?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamb said, I think the bylaw memo on the agenda is incorrect, so I will
Remove one or two.
So yeah, based on the removal of the public meeting, items 13.2 and 13.3, and then item 13.4, bylaw B 2025-46 is the zoning bylaw amendment for saunas when the public meeting was held in March.
Thank you very much.
So it's just the one bylaw for approval.
Okay, item 13.4 is our sauna bylaw. Be prepared to make a motion. Councillor Franzen?
Motion support receive
We
and
have
support.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Raybert for a seconder. We're voting on the motion to support the sauna bylaw, zoning bylaw amendment. Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 14, which is business arising out of a previous meeting. Does anyone have any business arising out of a previous meeting? I'm seeing none. We can move on now to item 15 of our agenda, which is our closed meeting. I would entertain a motion to go into closed. Councillor Cadigan for a mover. Councillor Franzen for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are going now to item 5.1, which is we are going into closed under the authority of the Ontario Municipal Act, section 239(2) to discuss B, personal matters about identifiable individual, municipal or local board employees, municipal employees, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, legal advice. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. I think I already did that. We are going into close. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Okay, we can move on now to item 15.2 of our agenda, which is rise from closed meeting. I would entertain a motion for same. Councillor Cadigan for a mover, Councillor Franzen for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. We are back in our regular council meeting. Okay, item 16 of our meeting, our agenda is business arising from our closed meeting. Item 16.1 is the adoption of the minutes from our closed meeting. Councillor Franzen for a mover, Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Guess we can't have any conversation about the minutes because it was enclosed. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 17 of our agenda, which is notices of motion. And I will turn the chair of this meeting over to Councillor Franzen to chair the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor Lamstead, would you like to present your notice of motion to council?
I shall. Thank you very much, Councillor Franzen. Item 17.1 of our agenda is my notice of motion is whereas Bessie Avenue North has been municipally maintained from the early 1990s to 2010, and whereas section 26, paragraph 2 and section 31 of the Municipal Act 2001 speaks to the activities of the municipality, including the spending of public money before December 31st, 2002 for the establishment of a highway. Whereas the distance of Bessie Avenue North reflected on the GIS is correct, and whereas Bessie Avenue North is entirely on the municipal road allowance, and whereas no previous bylaw established Bessie Avenue North as a public highway. Therefore now be it resolved that council direct staff to bring forward a necessary bylaw to declare Bessie Avenue North to the point indicated in the GS mapping is a public highway pursuant to section 31(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, and further that council direct staff to include Bessie Avenue North in the municipal road inventory for future rehabilitation, reconstruction, and maintenance.
Any member of council want to second that motion for discussion? Joe, thank you. Any discussion or comments on the motion? I imagine you should go first, Mayor.
I'm fine with the motion as it sits. I mean, this is something that we've been looking at for 5 or 7 years, and I think that our former road superintendent absolutely proved that it has been maintained in those 2 different decades. So I think this is something we could move forward to and have staff do some investigating into how we get this done.
I'd just like to make one comment, and this has been a real long file, and we've worked on this for a long time. I'm glad that we've reached this important juncture in this file. If there's no other comments, I'd like to take a vote. Okay, all in support of this motion? Motion passed.
Well, Councillor Franzen, thank you very much. I'm going to take the chair back.
Yeah.
We can move on to item 18 of the agenda, which is information items. Does anyone have any information items? Seeing none, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to every single person in this municipality that cut brush, carried brush, dragged brush, pushed brush off the roads. Thank you for all of our employees for all the help they've done. I think it's been amazing how many people have got together and helped each other. So thank you. That's my information. Okay, any further? Seeing no more information, we can go to item 19 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the confirming bylaw. Item 19.1 is the confirming bylaw. Councillor Cadigan. Councillor Raybert for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to item 20 of our agenda, which is adjournment. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Councillor Franzen for a mover, Councillor Raybert for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, staff. Thank you very much, council. Thank you very much for everyone in the gallery. Talk to you all soon.